quarter end, 9:07 a.m. The Zoom call dragged on. The CTO was crying. HR was preaching healing. Me, I hit send, one email, 17 names, and a goodbye that collapsed the company from the inside. They thought I was just a ghost. They forgot who built the system. Today, I pulled the plug. Silently, precisely, no warning. Quarter end, 9:07 a.m., and I'd already pulled the trigger. The Zoom call flickered with too many faces boxed into too little empathy. Our CTO, Tom, red-eyed and trembling, dabbed oat milk foam off his beard while trying to sound like he hadn't just wept into his reusable bamboo cup. Marla from HR, in her signature shade of institutional lavender, was orchestrating another resilience circle. She said the word like it was gospel, like breathing through grief was a corporate KPI. I had my camera off, my mic muted, but my finger, that had just clicked send. Subject line, notice, attachment, my resignation letter. 17 of our highest billing clients CC'd because silence only works when no one else is listening. I stared at the inbox. 1 beat, 2, then ding. Wherever you land, we follow. 5 words. From our most lucrative healthcare client. They'd seen through the glass and chosen fire. No one else in the call noticed the shift, but I did. It was like watching the first crack stretch across an ice-covered lake. You don't hear the collapse at first, you just feel the temperature change. Marla kept smiling, like someone wired her face that way. She was talking about gratitude, about grit. Her voice had that TED Talk cadence, polished and performative. Around her, the others nodded, eyes dead, smiles strained. The virtual background behind her was a beach scene with a Keep Calm and Innovate banner, flapping in non-existent wind. I adjusted the brightness on my screen. The sterile, blue-white glow painted my face in pixels, but no one could see. I could have been anywhere. I was everywhere, and no one knew I was already gone. This wasn't rage. This wasn't defiance. This was precision. I'd pack my bags before I lit the match. Every folder encrypted, every receipt archived, every message threaded and time-stamped. I'd scrubbed my commits, mirrored my logs, and left nothing unaccounted for. They thought I'd play nice. They thought I'd go quietly. I took a sip of coffee, bitter, burnt, still better than Brent's praise-once-a-year brew. Another ding. This time, a short message from a compliance officer I used to debug systems with, "Is this real?" I didn't respond. Let them wonder. Let the silence build tension, like the slow draw of a bowstring. Back on Zoom, Tom was wiping his nose with his sleeve. Someone else was speaking now, but I wasn't listening. My screen was already fading to black. I didn't log out. I disconnected. A calm wrapped around me like static before a storm. I closed my laptop. Outside, Boston's skyline looked cleaner than it had in weeks. A bird slammed into my window and fell, unbothered, before flapping again into the sky. Inside me, something ancient clicked into place. Not anger, not sadness, certainty. They'd already forgotten the systems I built, and now they'd remember the day I stopped holding them together. I wasn't surprised when they listed me between the fax machine and a ghost. It came in an email. Subject line, redundant asset audit, internal only. Someone must have misclicked, or maybe the system hiccuped. Either way, it landed in my inbox at 1:23 a.m., time-stamped like a confession. I stared at it for a while before opening. The glow of my desk lamp warmed the paper edges of old notebooks, and the only other sound was the rhythmic puff of my ancient coffee machine breathing its last. Outside, the city had long gone to sleep. Inside, I was still on call, still cleaning up after another junior dev's reckless deploy. I'd just saved a live, patient data sync from corrupting the entire record chain at St. Anselm's Hospital. No one knew. No one would ask. That was the kind of work I did, invisible until failure. And then, still, someone else got the credit. I clicked the email. It was a spreadsheet, table after table of asset classifications, employee IDs, salary to output ratios. I scrolled until I saw it. Mercer, Elena, legacy staff. Next to me, Canon fax unit, storage closet, C. Below me, Nguyen, Andy, on leave since March 2020. Notes, overpaid, underseen, low risk. My hand didn't shake. My face didn't change. But somewhere deep behind my ribs, something dropped. Not like a bomb. Like a stone in water. Heavy, silent, irretrievable. That was how they saw me, not the woman who patched their critical systems through blizzards and blackouts, not the one who'd stayed late for 6 months straight to onboard a team that outpaced her in title within a year. Just another ghost in the machine, just another button they forgot to disable. I took a screenshot, then another. Then I sat back in my chair and looked around the room. The cables I'd organized with zip ties last December, the old server monitor I kept because IT never replaced mine, the sticky note that read, "Don't forget your worth." I'd written that during a panic attack in Q3 and never found the strength to take it down. I could still smell the burnt coffee. The heater hissed like it was warning me, or maybe applauding. I didn't reply to the email, didn't forward it, didn't escalate. I saved it twice, one to cloud, one to USB. Then I deleted it from my inbox and emptied the trash, because I knew better than to react. Reactions get flagged, patterns get tracked, and people like me, we're only dangerous when we're quiet. Later, someone would wonder when it started, when the seams began to split. They'd think it was the resignation, or the client exodus, or maybe the day the USB showed up on legal's desk. But it wasn't. It started right there. In that moment, between a forgotten spreadsheet and a flickering desk lamp. When I realized they'd written me off like junk mail, and I decided to make them regret ever hitting send. 3 days before the biggest renewal of the year, they shut me out. I was sitting at my desk, still wearing the same hoodie from the night before, hair pulled back, half a protein bar untouched beside my keyboard. My screen refreshed, then blinked, a jarring red box, replacing what should have been rows of repository files. 403, unauthorized. I stared at it like it was a mistake because it had to be. Vital Sync Health was our crown jewel, a multi-million-dollar contract built on predictive AI pipelines I had designed myself. Every health record they processed, touch code I'd written. They called me the firewall, the clients, not the company. And now I couldn't even open the back end. I refreshed the tab twice, then opened Slack and messaged support. Hey, repo access for Vital Sync just vanished. Please check. Nothing. 5 minutes, 10. I sent a second ping. Still locked out. Need confirmation ASAP. Renewal this week. Still nothing. The air in my apartment felt denser. Not hot. Not cold. Just hollow. Like the oxygen had been replaced with static. I called Brent. 4 rings. Then that voice. Too bright. Too clipped. Hey, in back-to-back calls. Can we sync later? Click. He didn't even wait for a response. I sat there, phone still to my ear, listening to the silence bleed through. I lowered it slowly, like it weighed more than before, That's when the Slack ping came through. Marla Fenwick has scheduled a chat. Today, 12:15 p.m. No subject, no emoji. Just the sterile HR tone that always meant something was already decided. I showed up on time. Didn't dress up. Didn't smile. Her office smelled like eucalyptus and plastic ambition. Diffuser on the shelf. Frame degrees behind her. A motivational poster above her desk. People first. The glass over the print had a tiny fracture in the lower left corner. Barely noticeable. But there. She gestured to the chair like I was a child in need of guidance. I didn't sit. Elena, she began, clasping her hands like a therapist who'd already diagnosed me. Let's keep this brief. I said nothing. There's been feedback. A pause, a practiced sigh. Concerns around collaboration, visibility. You've been in the system a long time, and there's a perception, well, that perhaps you've become siloed. I raised an eyebrow. She flinched, barely. You're lucky, she said then, like she was reciting it from a script. You're lucky we tolerate you. Tolerate. Like I was a stain they hadn't bothered to scrub. For a moment, I thought I might speak, thought I might defend the weekend deploys, the on-call shifts I took without complaint, the patches I'd written during funerals and power outages. But I didn't. Instead, I looked past her, at that cracked glass over the words, people first. One more hairline fracture. One more lie they framed and hung on a wall. I smiled, not with warmth, not even with teeth, just enough to unnerve. And in that moment, I understood something fundamental. I was done hoping for credit. I was done waiting for recognition from people who couldn't spell compliance without a template. I walked out without a word, because when someone shows you exactly where you stand in their world, you don't argue. You leave them standing in theirs, alone. I wasn't planning an exit. I was planning an autopsy. After Marla's little performance, I went home, closed my front door without turning on the lights, and stood still long enough to feel the weight settle across my chest like armor. My apartment was quiet, not peaceful, sterile, like a server room left on overnight, buzzing with things no one else hears. I moved to my desk, bottom drawer, right side. I reached under a folder labeled Client Escalations Q1 and found it, a matte black USB drive. No label, no lanyard, just edges smoothed by time and neglect. It was still warm, or maybe I was. I plugged it in. The screen blinked to life like it had been waiting. Rows of folders appeared. Redundant, archived, forgotten, but I hadn't forgotten. UUID-linked patch logs. Internal escalations never closed. Screenshots of Slack threads. All the emergency fixes I'd been asked to just do without acknowledgement because we'll clean it up in the next cycle. The irony? I'd kept everything because I didn't trust them to hold the systems together, not out of spite, out of survival. But now it would serve a different function. Autopsy requires evidence. I wasn't building a case. I was preparing a reckoning. I opened the folder marked Vital Sync, Emergency Patch Logs. Line by line, I annotated the changes, highlighted the quick fixes I'd made in the middle of the night, traced the commits that were rebranded and presented by others during all hands. I printed a hard copy, then another. The air smelled like heated plastic and old toner. My red pen scratched against the page like a needle dragging vinyl. Each circle, each underlined comment was a pulse. I wasn't angry. I was focused, like a surgeon. At 11:42 p.m., a Slack message came in from Jules Tran. Just forwarded you a changelog quietly. Marla's restricting repo access to senior devs only. You weren't the only one. I replied with a thumbs up. Jewel didn't need a thank you. She knew what we were doing wasn't about gratitude. It was about accuracy. Jewel had always noticed the things others missed, the regressions they waved away, the way Brent would talk over me in meetings, then ask her, afterward, what I'd meant. She noticed, and she kept her head down, until now. I opened the changelog she sent. At the bottom, access override, date pushed 2 days ago, target user, Mercer, E. Marla had been planning this longer than I'd realized. My fingers tightened around the pen. I drew a thick red X across the page. Then I opened a blank document and began listing names. Not enemies, not allies, just people. People who watched it happen. People who said nothing. People who forgot who built the architecture they now stood on. The thing about architecture is this. Once you understand the bones, you know exactly where to place the pressure. It was after midnight when I stood up and stretched, my spine popping like dry twigs. I looked out the window. Boston's skyline glowed like a circuit board on standby, waiting. So was I, because revenge, done right, isn't about fury. It's about function. And I was just getting started. I didn't need to sell them on leaving. I just asked if they were happy. One by one, I made the calls. Not emails, not messages, calls. Old-fashioned, deliberate. I timed them for late afternoon when the office hum slows and truth gets easier to hear. My voice was warm, familiar, unthreatening. Hey, just checking in. How's support been this quarter? I let the silence hang after that question. Silence always tells the truth first. Most didn't answer immediately. You could hear them blink through the line. Then, one by one, they spoke. Some said they'd been frustrated lately, but didn't want to rock the boat. Others admitted they hadn't heard from anyone technical in weeks. A few laughed, bitterly. When they asked why I was calling, I deflected. Just taking stock, I said. Things shift. People shift. Not once did I say I was leaving. I didn't have to. The clients I'd nurtured weren't loyal to Helix Point. They were loyal to uptime, to calm voices at midnight, to code that worked when nothing else did. By the 5th call, the script wrote itself. By the 10th, they started asking where I was going. Not if, where. I kept my answers vague, my tone soft. I wanted them to arrive at the decision themselves. Quiet rebellion spreads best when it doesn't look like a mutiny. I waited until Friday. I wore black, not for drama, but clarity. Black clarifies. It removes distraction. I opened a blank email draft, wrote it in one shot. Subject, transition notice, a clean resignation, no flair, no shade, just facts. I CC'd 17 clients. No BCC. Transparency is a scalpel. Then I hit send. The second it left my outbox, I turned my phone face down and breathed. Not relief, not regret, just the stillness that comes after you stop pretending. I didn't have to wait long. Brent called at 2:14 p.m. His name flashed across the screen next to that smug little LinkedIn profile picture, the one with the Patagonia vest and the half smile of a man who thought charisma could substitute for competence. I let it ring once, twice, then I picked up. Elena, he said, too upbeat. Saw your email, bit of a surprise. Just wanted to... You can't unburn a bridge you pissed on, I said. Calm, precise. There was a beat of silence. I imagined him frozen, mid-gesture, mouth open, breath stuck. Elena, let's not... Look, I know things got messy, but let's be adults about this. I didn't respond. He filled the space with the kind of corporate mulch that always made my skin crawl. Transition planning, knowledge transfer, maintain goodwill, I let him talk until the words thinned out like cheap wine. Then I hung up. No click, no curse, just gone. The room fell quiet, except for the low spin of the ceiling fan overhead. It circled slowly, stirring nothing. I sat back, eyes on the screen, still glowing with the last email I'd ever send from that address. Behind me, the sun had started to shift, casting long shadows across my floor, like fingers stretching toward something they couldn't quite touch. I didn't move. Sometimes the most strategic thing you can do isn't to act, it's to exit so cleanly, so deliberately, that the damage doesn't appear until the silence sets in. By the time they read the subject line, the dominoes were already falling. The email had gone out less than 12 hours earlier. The sun wasn't even high enough to cast full light across the office windows, but my old inbox, still ghost-linked on my backup device, was hemorrhaging replies. Subject, termination of agreement. Subject, transition request. Subject, we're moving. One by one, 17 names turned into absences. Vital Sync, Metropath, Sentinel Diagnostics, Avalon Care. Some were terse, effective immediately. Some were colder, per our rights in Section 12C. But my favorite was from Apex Logic's CTO. About time, you kept them afloat longer than they deserved. Each message was a detonation with no flash, just impact. Inside Helix Point, I imagined the silence breaking, first like a hairline crack in porcelain, then like shrapnel, Slack channels lighting up with frantic messages, Marla's smiling face replaced with exclamation points, Brent's motivational posts drying up mid-thread. I hadn't touched them. I hadn't hacked or leaked or even raised my voice. All I'd done was leave and let the weight of their negligence collapse in on itself. At 10:06 a.m., Jules messaged me from a burner Slack. Legal's spiraling. Marla's in the war room. Brent's MIA. Someone said data breach out loud. I took a sip of coffee, black, still hot, and stared at the box on my kitchen table. Matte black envelope, no label, no return address. 3 of them, actually. 1 for legal, 1 for the board liaison, 1, because I couldn't resist, for Brent's wife. Inside, a USB, plastic shell, no branding. The contents? Operation Weasel, a private Slack thread created during the last round of layoffs. Members, Marla, Brent, 2 VPs, a few senior PMs. Its purpose, identify and isolate non-revenue assets. Color-coded tags, risk assessments, suggested exit timelines, and next to my name, glorified keyboard monkey, train new devs, then cut, low PR risk. What they hadn't accounted for was Marla's fondness for overclicking. She'd enabled Slack voice logs for accessibility, of course. So now I had clips, conversations, Brent joking about throttling my production access so I'd look incompetent by Q2, Marla suggesting they rotate her off visibility until I take the hint. They hadn't just tried to erase me. They'd left their fingerprints on the eraser. At 11:17 a.m., a legal assistant posted in the company's all-hands Slack. Please be advised, emergency town hall rescheduled to 1:30 p.m. The message was deleted 2 minutes later, but I'd already saved the screenshot. By noon, my phone buzzed again. Jules. Marla's eyes are bloodshot. Brent's profile just went gray. Slack status. Offline. No farewell post. No hand off. Just gone. I leaned back in my chair, watching the ceiling fan spin, and imagined Brent sitting in some conference room, tie askew, realizing too late that every smart move he thought he made had been traced to arrogance. The funny thing about building systems is If you build them right, you always know where the pressure points are. And sometimes, when people try to gut the foundation, you let them. You just make sure they're standing underneath when the whole damn thing caves in. I didn't shout. I simply pressed play. The voice file was 34 seconds long, grainy, clipped, enough ambient feedback to feel real, like someone had leaned too close to a mic they didn't know was live. The clip began with Marla's voice, syrupy smooth and transactional. She's competent, sure, but she's also tired, invisible tired. Let her train the new hires, then pivot her out. No noise. Then Brent. Yeah, slow roll her access, make her stumble, document the mistakes. By quarter 2, she'll either rage quit or walk. Either way, clean exit. Silence. Then a chuckle. Marla again. Besides, she's just lucky we tolerate her. That was the line, the one I'd heard before, across a desk, behind a half smile, the one that had broken something inside me. But hearing it again, raw, unfiltered, shared, was something else. I sent it at 3:08 p.m., not to one person, not to the board, not even to legal. I sent it to the number compliance channel, public, auditable, permanent. A minute later, the Slack thread blew up like a brush fire in high wind. Is this real? Is that Brent's voice? Holy hell, who leaked this? And just like that, Operation Weasel had teeth. I didn't watch the fallout in real time. I didn't need to. Instead, I climbed 3 flights up a weathered fire escape and took a seat on the rooftop of a quiet bar I used to visit before everything went sideways. The kind of place where no one asks questions, where the chairs wobble, and the bourbon's served in mismatched glasses that taste like dusk. The city stretched around me, glass towers humming like servers, amber lights blinking like heartbeat monitors. I took a sip. The burn was clean. My phone buzzed. Jules Tran. Boom. No punctuation. Just that. One word. An exhale typed into history. I stared at the message, then looked out across Boston's skyline, soft and sharp in the dark. Somewhere, on a different rooftop, or maybe a locked conference room, Brent was being pulled aside mid-sentence. Probably thought it was a misunderstanding, a misquote, a deep fake, until the voice played, until he heard himself say it, train her, then cut. Somebody told me later that his Slack profile disappeared mid-meeting. Not signed out, not away, deleted. A gray silhouette, where ego used to live. Marla didn't speak for the rest of the day, not in chat, not in meetings, not even when legal asked her to clarify the context of her remarks. I finished my bourbon and ordered another. The night was cool, the kind of cool that lets you breathe deeper than usual. Below me, brake lights stuttered along Boylston. Overhead, a plane cut silently through the black. You don't always need to raise your voice to be heard. Sometimes all it takes is the truth, unedited, undeniable, and a quiet enough room to let it echo. They went viral for all the wrong reasons. It started as a thread on Reddit, a screenshot, a pull quote, nothing official, just someone in the audience with a long memory and a better phone camera. The quote looped on a screen behind a plain white booth number 324, tucked just opposite the keynote stage at the National Tech Ethics Summit in D.C. She's just lucky we tolerate her. The words faded in and out like a ghost on loop over soft footage of server racks and AI data maps that blurred into lines of code. No faces, no names, just implication, suggestion, truth clothed in plausible deniability. I didn't title the montage. I didn't need to. Everyone who mattered already knew the story, or had lived a version of it. The booth was sterile, clean, minimal. One tall banner, 3 bullet points. No swag, no noise, but the foot traffic, constant. Brent was scheduled to speak at 2 p.m. Topic, retaining talent in agile cultures. You couldn't script that kind of irony. I arrived an hour early, hair tied back, charcoal blazer, blood-red shirt beneath, no name tag, just the quiet confidence of a woman who built something from scorched earth. I stood at the edge of the booth, sipping tea from a ceramic cup. No lid, no label, just heat. Brent walked in at 1:52. I watched him take the stage, shuffling his notes like they might save him. He hadn't seen me yet, not until the screen behind him lit up. First, the quote. Then, the waveform from the leaked voice file. Then, a sentence in all caps. The system didn't fail her. It followed orders. I saw the moment he recognized it. His body went still, jaw set, shoulders tightened like a man trying not to flinch in front of wolves. The audience shifted. Murmurs. Someone took a picture, then someone else. By 2:05, he was trying to speak over the buzz. By 2:07, a foam stress ball, one of his own branded giveaways, hit the stage at his feet. Security didn't move. They didn't need to. Truth doesn't need a badge. It just needs witnesses. He ended early. No Q&A. On his way out, Brent passed the booth. His eyes locked on mine. I didn't smile. He didn't blink. For a moment, we stood like old statues in a city that no longer belonged to either of us. Then he kept walking. Later that night, the clip hit TechCrunch, then LinkedIn, then Twitter. 1,000 variations of the same meme. Brent mid-flinch with captions like "Agile this" and "She's just lucky we tolerate her." I didn't comment, didn't repost. I had no need for noise. I was already back in my hotel room, feet up, watching the city flicker in real time. Jules sent a message. You see it? I did, but I didn't need the world to see him fall. I only needed them to see me standing. They tried to erase me. I turned that silence into signal. The first day in the new office, I arrived before sunrise. No ribbon cutting, no champagne, just the sound of keys turning in a lock that belonged to me. The space was small for now. A second-floor corner unit above a bookstore that smelled like dust and permanence. White walls, bare desks, natural light that cut in like honesty through the blinds. I walked the floor in silence, hearing only the faint creak of wood under my boots. No clutter, no posters, no platitudes, just breath and bandwidth. I hung one thing, an old ID badge, Helix Point 2016. The photo faded, the corners worn, the plastic casing spidered with a fine crack along the top right edge. I pinned it to a corkboard near the door. No frame, no caption. It was the only relic I brought with me. By noon, Jules arrived. She didn't knock. She never had. She stepped inside, carrying 2 coffees and a folder filled with candidate resumes. She looked around, eyebrows raised. This feels clean, she said. It is, I told her, intentionally. She handed me a cup and walked over to the whiteboard where I'd already scrawled 3 columns in red marker. Build, protect, remember. Jules nodded. You kept it simple. No more noise, I said. She smiled, slow and certain. You really did it. I didn't reply. I just pulled out a notepad and began writing names. People I remembered from other companies, other corridors. Engineers with too much conscience and not enough politics. Analysts who had their wings clipped for speaking truth. QA testers who flagged real issues and got labeled not a team player. The forgotten, the filtered out, the ones like me. We didn't need heroes. We needed a harbor. By the end of the week, we had 5 hires. By the end of the month, we had our first contract. One of the clients who'd followed me out of the wreckage without hesitation. They didn't want flash. They wanted reliability, honesty, code that didn't lie. Every Friday, we held strategy sessions with no PowerPoint, just people, talking, asking real questions, listening. I'd look at the whiteboard sometimes when no one else was in the room. 3 words, still there. Build, protect, remember. Not a motto, a map. Every time someone asked what our culture was, I pointed to the wall. By spring, a second office was under renovation. Jules handled the vendor. I handled the talent. And every time we made a new offer, I wrote a line at the bottom of the contract in pen. We don't tolerate. We trust. Late one night, I stayed back to clean up. I wiped down the conference table, erased the day's plans from the board. On my way out, I paused by the badge. The crack in the plastic caught the light just right. A fine scar. I didn't flinch. I reached up, touched the edge of it with one finger, and whispered, "You were wrong." Then I turned off the lights, because this wasn't a comeback. It was a beginning. I don't need credit. I just need control. The pen felt heavier than it should have, not because of the contract, but because of what it meant to sign without looking back. The ink bled clean across the page. No hesitation, no flourish, just confirmation. 12-month engagement, custom architecture, full autonomy. I set the pen down and slid the document across the table to my new client's legal rep, who nodded like he'd just witnessed the simplest miracle. No press release, no photo op, no handshake that would end up on LinkedIn with a caption like, "Thrilled to announce." I didn't need to announce anything. I had already done it. Outside the glass meeting room, my team worked in soft focus, quiet clicks of keyboards, the low murmur of strategy sessions, Jules at the whiteboard, sketching integrations like she was mapping escape routes for the overlooked. This was ours, not inherited, not borrowed, built. I stood, walked slowly through the main hallway, glass walls, smooth floors, the kind of clarity you only get when the foundation isn't rotting. My heels clicked against the tile like punctuation, not stiletto sharp, just enough rhythm to remind myself I belonged here. At the far end of the hall, our mission statement looped silently across a digital display. No narration, no soundtrack, just bold white text fading in and out against a black screen. She's just lucky we tolerate her. I kept the quote. I reclaimed it. That sentence, once used to diminish me, now framed the standard. A reminder, not just of where I'd been, but of what this place would never become. Every week, new clients reached out, not because we were loud, but because we were precise. Word traveled, not by headlines, but by trust. The kind of quiet reputation built only in the absence of spectacle. I never chased the spotlight. I didn't have to. When you stop asking for permission to exist, the world either adjusts or evaporates. My office was at the back, corner but modest. No view, no gold plate on the door, just a single frame behind my desk. The old helix point badge, cracked, untouched, never polished. It stayed there to remind me that legacy isn't about what they give you. It's about what they can't take away. I sat down, checked the time, 2 minutes until our weekly all hands. I didn't prep notes. I didn't need slides. I knew what mattered. Before I logged in, I opened a new tab. One line of code blinked on the screen, a simple query string, clean and sharp. I watched the cursor pulse beside it, then typed one more word, deploy. because this wasn't retaliation. It was restoration, and I was just getting started. If you asked me what I regret, I wouldn't say the silence. I'd say the years I mistook tolerance for respect. The long nights I waited for someone to say, "You matter," when I should have been asking myself, "Do I?" I used to think survival meant staying, enduring, accommodating, shrinking to fit the frame I was handed. But all that does is hollow you out until the person they overlook is no longer even visible to you. Walking away wasn't an act of defiance. It was an act of remembering who I was before the edits, who I still am, beneath the email chains and quiet bruises of corporate dismissal. They taught me that systems forget. But I've learned something better. Systems are rebuilt, and this time I'm the architect. Maybe this story isn't just mine. Maybe you've sat in a meeting, heart pounding, while someone else recited your idea louder and earned applause for it. Maybe you've been the person in the room who stayed quiet, not out of fear, but because you knew no one was truly listening. Maybe you've been tolerated when you deserved to be trusted. So let me ask you gently, what would change if you stopped waiting for permission? What happens when we stop asking to belong inside someone else's blueprint and start drawing our own? If you're still here, thank you. Thank you for walking with me, not just through fire, but into clarity. If this story echoes something in you, I hope it offers a little light, not as a torch, but as a reflection. And if you've ever been the silent one in the room, know this: silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it's the wind-up before everything finally breaks open. If you've lived something like this, you're not alone. Feel free to share your story. You never know who's still waiting to hear they're not invisible. Elena.